Now back to one of our top stories today, which is the national and provincial government audit results. Auditor-General has revealed that irregular expenditure increased to 62.6 billion rand in the 2018-2019 financial year. Now, in an effort to avoid this, he says his office can now refer matters to perhaps this will ensure that matters relating to financial irregularities which were not CEO of OUTA. Very good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us.
Nice to be with you.
Let's look at the results that have emerged. Is this a red flag for ratings agencies galore as we await the announcement next year?
Yes, absolutely. And what makes matters worse is that the problem isn't getting any better. It gets worse each year. And even if there's a slight improvement, we seem to sit back and relax and applaud that when it does happen, but it's not even happening. We are coming off such a bad base to be worse than last year, and last year worse than the previous year. This is becoming such a serious problem. And until the Auditor-General starts is being held accountable. No one is being asked to pay for their part in the problem, fired, jailed where there's clear evidence of corruption and fraud. Nothing is happening. So you have a government that is in limbo and people know that they can do what they want and get away with it. Now, we know the Auditor-General has some powers. Yeah. We need him to start exercising those powers.
So let's look at those powers. Just in terms of the Public Audit Act that had been amended. I mean, what does it briefly describe and how does it allow the the Auditor-General rather, to take it forward and act on this?
Well, it enables the Auditor-General now to raise the findings and then stipulate a corrective action that has to happen. The individual then has to go and rectify the matter, gives them certain time periods, either the officer or the body, and then to follow up. And if nothing happens, then the Auditor-General can start issuing certificates of payment, either to the individual or the office, to rectify it by being held accountable for monies that have gone missing, and other actions that can be taken, such as disciplinary action, removal from office and so forth. So these are all good things, but they're only as good as they're being used. If they're not being used, nothing happens.
What does it sort of reflect about the leadership at hand, particularly under President Cyril Ramaphosa at this point?
Well, I think he's still dealing with a bit of a hangover from the Zuma years, but we can't give him any more rope. What we want to see, Cyril Ramaphosa, these are the departments that run our country, both at provincial and national level. This is absolute disgrace. This is a sign of poor leadership, that allows and tolerates mediocrity, that allows people to get away with the stuff that's happening. I mean, 62 billion rand. Think about that figure. It's massive. And then the wasteful expenditure as well on top of that. And that's the stuff that the Auditor-General gets to. So what we need to see is a government that is leading and managing our taxes and our expenses in a responsible manner. This is irresponsible, and we now need action. People need to be held accountable. That means fired and jailed.
We're looking at governance, government wage bill that's also come into the spotlight. We still heard the finance minister also using that as a means perhaps to curb expenditure. I mean, has anything been done in that regard, perhaps to assist the outcomes? What more needs to be done in that regard?
Action. The talk is cheap. Talk is cheap. We hear year after year, midterm budget speech and budget speech after budget speech, the threats of government now getting hard on cabinet, but nothing's happened. Where is the accountability? Where is the one person? Show us the one, the two, the three, the five. Quite frankly, half of the people in those positions need to be hauled over the coals and removed, quite frankly. And then the management and the leadership underneath them, if they're not going to hold the individuals to account, that is you have a job, you're employed to do a job. If you're not going to audit properly, if you're not going to follow through, if you're not going to take disciplinary action, if you're not going to remove the problems from this organization, then you need to be held accountable, and the cabinet
of the Auditor-General at large. So you mentioned the issuing of certificates, etc. I mean, how long would that process inevitably take? So now once that is issued, how much longer will we have to wait before the income and debt losses actually incurred?
I don't think it has to be long. He stipulates a period. If the work isn't done within that period and satisfactorily done, then he needs to take action. I mean, the amount of audits that are just not followed through when you look into the report after a year of being told to fix the problem, and a year later still nothing is done. I mean, that's enough evidence to now start acting harshly. And we need firm action taken, because what happens is when that starts to happen, you start to see people sitting up and saying in their positions of financial management, if I'm going to be held responsible and I'm incompetent, I cannot do this job, actually. And that's what we're seeing in a lot of our engagements at both local and provincial level. We're seeing people that actually do not understand their role, their oversight powers. They've got no clue. When we point out what the issues are, they don't even understand those problems. Now, if you say, well, best you understand quickly because you individually, personally will be held accountable, I think those people will start removing themselves because that they need to acknowledge and understand that they are not equipped, they're not qualified to be sitting in these positions.
So it's a whole conversation about upskilling as well to perhaps balance the financial health of the institutions.
Absolutely.
Who's responsible for that? I mean, like you said, you can take a horse to the water, you can't force it to drink.
Well, ultimately we get the government that we elect. So everybody will say, but we were elected. Yeah, we understand that there are a lot of dynamics involved in that election process. I think we're seeing more and more as we get closer and closer to the next elections, how these are starting to play out. The time for changes is big. I think the real issue here is you've got government, which is supposed to do its work, and then you've got politicians who interfere in governance. And it's that interference. A lot of the debt in local municipalities would not be there had the payments that were not due because they didn't qualify for the payments not been paid. And what happens is you have good governance people, administrators in government wanting to do the right thing, but they keep getting tapped on the shoulder by politicians who say, don't do that, it's not good for votes. So you have municipalities that don't pay their Eskom bills, and you have this mess. The politicians, simply put, are messing things up. They need to get out of government. They need to stop interfering with government. We need to put in the right people into government and run this country properly like a business, because right now it's a defunct business. Nobody would give us money under these conditions.
We look at the results that have obviously come through for the different provinces. The Western Cape, it was declared, continues to produce some best results. Looking at the model that exists perhaps in that province and obviously the dynamics, what can be learnt as opposed to the Free State where, it came in as the worst province?
Well, the Free State is corrupt. The Free State has got people put into positions through cronyism, through party patronage processes. It is the most corrupt province right down to local government level, and their towns are collapsing. And that's a direct result of the leadership that has been put in those places to run that, and not just yesterday, going back a decade or more. It really does come down to, are you going to put the right people into positions to run government, local, provincial, national? You're going to don't put in people who are incompetent and then they're propped up by advisors, or advisors advise them on stuff that they think they want to hear. We need proper scrutiny about what happens when you don't do this. What happens when you don't plan for our water requirements for this country over the next decade, our electricity requirements, our road requirements and all of that. And then where is the money falling through the cracks, and what are we going to do about it? If we have to hold people to account and lock them up, do so. Don't be scared to do so because it might not be good for politics.
I mean, he did mention that preventative measures is something that has to be focused on as well. So looking at state-owned enterprises, he also says it continues to regress year after year. I mean, what seen what's happening in Eskom, which I know was not even included at this point.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, the long term is a failed state. We have a failed state where it collapses. Zimbabwe is a failed state. Venezuela are failed states. These are countries that nobody will invest in. People who are investing get out as quickly as they can, and then there's no recovery from that. Well, if there is, it's a long and concerted effort, but it needs massive change. Or otherwise, if you catch it just before that, it is austerity measures that put us into a very precarious and tough position for decades.
Yeah.
So we're at the precipice, and we keep getting pushed closer to it, and we push back 1 foot, but we take another 2 steps closer to it. We're not dealing and tackling the real issues in the manner that they should.
So Wayne, I mean, the results have now been highlighted, and as you said, we're on the cusp. What is the immediate action that could go forward, perhaps to improve just the state at large and also make action implementable?
So leadership from the president to his cabinet, really making them understand how serious this problem is. Then Kimi Mokwetu to exercise his powers, but not half-heartedly, not willy-nilly. Do everything you can. Let us see heads roll. Let us see people having to go to their bank managers to get loans to pay back the fines that they individually are going to be held accountable for. Let us see real action, because we have gone decades now of no action. No accountability means we'll carry on doing what we're doing. We have to see accountability, because we cannot wait for elections every 5 years. This is a mad situation that we're in right now.
All right, Wayne, thank you very much for joining us. Let's leave it there. Of course, so Wayne Duvenage, CEO of OUTA, just chatting to us about the Auditor-General's results that have been released for the 2018-2019 period.